Hi everybody, I'm Brandon Gustafson. I own and operate 2 assisted living facilities, and I created this channel to help people like you learn the ins and outs of investing in assisted living. Welcome to Assisted Living Investing. In our last video, we talked about the different positions that you can see in an organizational chart for an assisted living. What are those positions? How do they work? And gave a quick overview of what those are. And I hope that was helpful for you. Today, we're going to be getting into how do I set up my own personal organizational chart? What does mine look like? So first off, I'm going to go over our entity structure. And I covered this in a previous video, so go ahead and watch that on how we set up our entity and kind of what that process is like. But just a recap, we have a 2-person ownership group for our entity. So both my father and I own 50% of the business. And so our organizational structure looks very similar to this one. As a reminder, I've got this chart as a free resource for you on assistedlivinginvesting.net. Go over there on the free resources page and you can access it there. You might need it for something if you're talking to a lender or somebody like that. They might need something like this. So just kind of be aware that that might be something you need. So next I'm going to talk about our operational structure. Our operational structure, again, looks very similar to something like this structure that we went on in a previous video that I'll link up above. We sit at the top as the owner and operator. We have a facility administrator that reports up to us directly, and we have our regular meetings with our administrator, and I'll link a card up above where we kind of go through the process of how we have our meetings and things like that with our facility administrator. And then the house manager and caregivers report up to that facility administrator. We do have house managers at each of our facilities, at both of them, and they've been just extremely valuable when we've had our administrators out for things like vacation or an illness or something like that. We had one of our administrators went on a week-long vacation, and we had an issue come up, and our house manager was on top of it, and she knocked it out of the park. She just did an incredible job in responding to us and helping us through the issue. And we were so grateful to have her do that. And she was at a point where she was able to understand things, and she had been trained by the administrator, so she knew kind of what types of reports she needed to make and how to handle things and who to talk to with the state and different things like that. And so it just made the process so much more smooth for us as an ownership group when our administrator was out. It made it so our administrator didn't have to handle it while she's on vacation and those types of things. And so a house manager is just extremely valuable. We also have a position as an activities coordinator in our Colorado facility. And I didn't get into that in a previous video, but it's another one that's kind of like the house manager where you can kind of promote from within. And this person is also one of our caregivers, but they plan the activities that we do with the residents. So this is typically something the administrator might do, or in a larger facility, you're going to have a designated activities director, and they plan the activities for these for the residents. In our smaller facilities, it's just an additional responsibility we give to our caregivers, where it allows us to pay them a little bit more, kind of build in that structure where we can then help promote them and work on employee retention, which for us is extremely important, especially in a time like we're living in right now. But some of those activities that activities director, activities coordinator might do are things, like a game night or a barbecue, offsite activities like in Colorado. I know we've gone to the zoo in the past because there's a zoo just not too far from our facility, and those types of things. Haircuts is another one that we've seen happen. So just a lot of different activities that are going to happen. That activities coordinator is the one that coordinates those activities, brings people in, or coordinates transportation to some of these other locations and things like that. And like I mentioned, having positions like a house manager and an activities director really frees up some of that time for your facility administrator, which we talked a lot about in our last video. So I'll reference that up above. Now, the next question that I know you're going to have is, are these required positions, all the ones that I talked about that we have at our facility. And the only position that is really truly required is going to be that facility administrator. We've talked about in a previous video why that person is important. So go ahead and watch that. But that person, your facility administrator is a licensed professional, and you have to have them in order to operate your facility. You also need caregivers. They're required if you're going to operate your business. There are going to be certain regulations in your state for caregiver to resident ratio. So you want to do some research on that and how many caregivers you need, especially as you're underwriting a deal to determine if it's the right one for you. But it's something you're going to have caregivers if you're going to have an assisted living facility. But those are the only positions that are required. The house manager, the activities coordinator, those are not going to be required for you to operate your facility. And some of those positions I talked about in the last video that are more of those third party, a nurse or a chef or some of those, depending on your state, you might be required to have a nurse be at your facility for a certain amount of time. So you want to make sure you do your research on there to figure out, do I need to have a nurse? Do I need to contract with a nurse to come in? What's that process like? That might be one that is required, but those are just kind of things that are more state specific, and you'll just have to kind of figure out what is needed at your specific facility. Next time, we're going to be talking about promoting staff from within your organizational structure in assisted living. We talked a lot about that in the past, but I want to kind of get into it and talk a little bit more about it in depth. So we'll talk about that in our next video. To learn more about investing in assisted living, make sure you visit over on assistedlivinginvesting.net. I've got other content over there, working on setting up scheduling for consulting calls and things like that as well with me. And just follow me on my other social media platforms. We'd love to continue the conversation over there. And remember, it doesn't take a lot, just a little bit, and keep going, keep making that step-by-step progress. If you do that, you will be successful. Thanks for watching.